Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining today's story. And the mic is working, which is great. I want to thank you all for being here and people from all over the world, because even though this is a US specific crypto bill, it will have an impact on other countries, because what happens with regulation, other countries tend to follow suit. So let's jump in to the new crypto bill, the good, bad, the ugly, and why it matters to you. First of all, well, you know what the channel's about, and this doesn't matter. This is not legal advice, I should say, actually. So the story today, real funny. There's so much to unpack in this bill, but I just wanted to hone in on all the most important areas that I believe are important for this community to be aware of. And again, as I mentioned, elements of this will be copied by other countries if it is approved one day, or maybe they may even front run the US regulators because they're going to take a long time to process this. We'll talk about that too in a minute. And remember, I'm not an attorney and none of this is baked. It's a proposal, but it's a great first step. So let's dive in. First of all, these are the ladies behind it. The overarching goal is to build a crypto framework, and they had courage to do it, to bring crypto into financial services. And the two ladies down there, you've got Kirsten Gillibrand on the far left. She's a Democrat out of New York in the Agricultural Committee. Go figure. We're getting answers that everybody else is ignoring from the Agricultural Committee. And Cynthia Lummis, who is from Wyoming. She's a Republican. So that's very good. We have two different parties working on this together, which is absolutely fantastic. And they're both ladies. Fantastic. And, it's a regulated framework we really need to bring about flexibility, transparency, innovation, all the good stuff that the crypto world brings to the world. And let's go see what's in here. So first of all, the first piece is digital asset security innovation. They make a clear distinction between commodities and securities and determine regulatory requirements for each. So the thoughts I have about this, the way this format's going to work is I'm going to pull out the piece and then I'm going to give you my thoughts. I could be right, I could be wrong, we'll see. But with this, they are invoking the Howey test to determine things like debt, equity, security, etc. And if you comply, it is a commodity. What does that mean? Okay, let's dig into this. In this little piece, this little excerpt here, the key part here is the last sentence in yellow, and that is the bill would label many cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin as securities. We already know from our friend Gary Gensler that he believes Bitcoin and Ethereum are not securities because they stood the test of time and the way they were issued. Now let's talk about what that means. Commodities versus securities. Obviously, this whole bill has a very Bitcoin heavy skew, i.e. the people behind it are Bitcoin proponents, the people they spoke to are Bitcoin maxis. So my thoughts is this could bring about a bifurcation of Bitcoin versus the rest, all other cryptos, or Bitcoin and Ethereum versus the rest. And anyone outside of Bitcoin holders could fall under the purview of the SEC, i.e. commodities would now be Bitcoin and securities would be the rest, including layer ones, NFTs, all that type of stuff. I think having Bitcoin as a commodity would be fantastic. Tons of benefits there. It could be truly like a piece of gold. But let's jump a little bit deeper. Let's talk about the SEC versus the CFTC. These are the two regulatory bodies. Obviously, CFTC manages commodities, SEC securities. And basically, this would establish crypto as a commodity, not a security, so out of the hands of the SEC, but only for certain ones like Bitcoin. And the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, the whole name of this whole bill, would empower the CFTC, which is Commodity Futures Trading Commission, to regulate most of the industry. But probably not. Most of Bitcoin, probably, if they even can get away with it. And the Lummis-Gillibrand bill would classify the vast majority of digital assets as commodities. So this is where I think we're getting tripped up, because again, it shows you how unbaked it is. My thought is Gary Gensler is not going to let crypto go. Second of all, maybe there is a slight chance, but I'd say it's very, very small, that Bitcoin would be labeled a commodity. I think the rest will definitely be labeled securities, but we'll see. Too many would fight it if that was the case. And my other weird theory is Gary Gensler believes crypto is his. So my theory is he definitely doesn't want to give up Bitcoin. He loves Bitcoin. He lectured about it at MIT. And this may have a positive impact on the future. This is why it matters to us. Because I believe this could trigger SEC action, i.e. approve a spot ETF pretty fast. Because if you have, regulators saying, hey, crypto like Bitcoin that passed the Howey test need to be regulated by the CFTC, not the SEC, and might kick him into action, which would be great for the price action of Bitcoin. So fingers crossed, it might be a tinfoil hat theory, but we'll see. Now let's talk about the ESG stuff. We all love ESG. Woohoo. So this actually happened on the heels of a potential mining ban in New York. The New York passes a tweet here you can read at your leisure, but New York passed a bill banning proof of work mining for 2 years. It has not been signed into law yet. Very important. The governor of New York, I think, is Kathy Hochul. She is up for re-election, and she is unlikely to make a decision on whether to sign it before the primary election. And remember, we'll be looking at all bills very closely, but the fact that this new regulation has come out will definitely make her hit the pause button for the ban on mining in New York. So we'll see. So maybe there's other good effects of this. It can prevent reckless regulation from being passed on a state-by-state basis. Let's talk about taxes. Nobody likes talking about taxes, but it is a very important topic, however. The legislation provision an exemption for capital gains that don't surpass $200 on Bitcoin payment for goods and services. Let's drill into that one for a second. $200 is, in my opinion, a nothing burger. Like, how many coffees is that at Starbucks at nearly $8 a coffee? If you drink as much as I do, it'll get you about 2 weeks into the year, maybe a lot less. So that is a problem. I think they should have bumped up to at least $600 or $1,000 or $2,000 to be more realistic. But hopefully that will change down the line too. Now, clarifies as well gains from mining and staking. Very important. There's no tax impact until you sell. So if you mine Bitcoin at home or in your grandma's basement or whatever, you don't actually incur any penalty until you actually sell it. Same thing for staking. Staking rewards aren't taxed until you flip them into another asset, convert them. So that is good, and that is logical, and that makes sense. The infrastructure bill didn't have that stuff a while back. And the other good piece is lending is not a taxable event. This is good too. So many questions here, though, regarding all of this, regarding timeframe, frequency, airdrops, retirement investing, all the stuff that Fidelity's trying to do. We don't know where all this is going to go, but at least they're making steps in the right direction across some of these key elements. Let's talk about DAOs for a second. Decentralized autonomous organizations. These are business entities for tax purposes. It requires DAOs to be registered in the US. Very, very important. And if they're not, they view them as being personally taxable, and requires all exchanges and stablecoin providers to be registered entities. Very important. The key here is a lot to unpack, but trying to decipher the current language, we don't even know if it would include things like AMMs as we go forward. And of course, anonymous DAOs will be shut down. That's the DAO news. Now let's talk about stablecoins, especially in light of everything that's happened. This moves the stablecoin market to 100% reserve requirement, and all assets held in reserve to be publicly disclosed and to be able to redeem them in real time. This is critical. This would definitely hurt things like Tether, where there was questionable reserves behind the scenes, special type of paper, etc. Also, there's another piece there, Section 606, implementation rules relating to payment stablecoins. It basically ensures stablecoin issuers and new entrants can be regulated, opening the door to things like banks, credit unions, etc. for the issuance of payment stablecoins. So this is both good and bad, depending if you want TradFi to come into the stablecoin market. But we'll see. My thoughts are issuers would not have to register as depository institutions. That's good news. Very good news, because that's a lot of paperwork, and it defines who can issue stablecoins. So again, still very early days yet, but we'll see. Let's jump on to the next topic, is impact on altcoins. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are commodities to be regulated by the CFTC. That's what we picked up from this so far, the way they are described and looking at all the history and things that Gary Gensler said last year. Other cryptos, however, are securities and probably going to be regulated by the SEC. And they have tried to double their staff, I think, over the past couple of months to deal with all of the Ponzi's and the scams that are going on out there in the Wild West of crypto. And they're also going to use the Howey test to determine whether the asset is a security. So we'll see. Again, going back to me, I think everybody behind this is kind of a bit of a Bitcoin maxi. So that does not bode well for all things other than Bitcoin and Ethereum. We shall see. Now, let's talk about miners. Again, no tax event until you turn your mined crypto into cash. Very important. This is a huge relief for miners. Absolutely critical, because the infrastructure bill said something very different. Now, there is another angle to this. Let me check. There's one other piece I forgot to mention as well. It's not listed here. I forgot to mention it, but there is cross-department collaboration in some other section that talks about, I think the Federal Energy Commission, or Regulatory Commission, is going to look at energy usage for mining. So there'll be proof of work mining as well. So there will be that cross collaboration between CFTC, SEC, etc., banking, financial service committees, energy committees. Now, what is the impact on proof of work miners? This is kind of tricky because we have different senators, like in Texas. When the Chinese mining ban happened, he opened the doors and the floodgates for miners to come to Texas. And now Texas is one of the biggest mining areas on planet Earth. And that happened literally overnight. And he's also a massive crypto proponent, has a ton of crypto donors, and he wants this proof of work network in his state. So keeping Bitcoin strong and all weak directly benefits Senator Ted Cruz and some of his largest new donors. And again, there it is. I did write it down, actually. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is in consultation with these other groups. So we'll see. Again, you can see the political nature here, all the infighting, all the battles, all the power struggles, all the people that run their states. They want what's best for their states. You've got the New York governors trying to delay hitting the ban on mining, and you got Ted Cruz opening the doors to mining, who's going to influence how this law is actually written. So we'll see. I think this could have a negative impact depending on who's in power and who's calling the shots. It could have negative impact on proof of stake plays down the road. And it all depends on exactly how much power the FERC has, the Energy Regulation Commission. And we'll see if they become all powerful and the whole ESG narrative comes into play. It could also go the other way and impact proof of work miners. Bit of a mouthful. So, impact on NFTs. Well, it wasn't really covered, but is consistent with what we heard earlier. And there's a small nod to NFTs. I think they'll definitely fall under the SEC regulation as securities as we go forward. Now, impact on lending. Section 205 covers digital asset lending agreements, establishes that digital asset lending agreements are not generally taxable events. So important for us, especially for those of us who plan to live off their Bitcoin without having to sell it in the future. So this is good. The key part there is in the same way that securities lending transactions are not today. So people that have a lot of stock, for example, a ton of Apple stock or Microsoft stock, they can borrow against it and live off it without ever incurring any capital gains. And that's how the rich get richer. Another interesting piece, there was a little piece in here about the space surrounding stablecoin regulation and the banning of central bank digital currencies. Very positive. It looks like the people behind this bill do not want to follow the path of China with their spy coin, CBDC digital yuan. There's also a piece in there that writes about the regulation of, I can't remember which department, something cybersecurity, but to make sure that the infrastructure of the US does not have exposure to the digital yuan on US devices or US government devices. Super interesting. So they're getting ahead of that. They don't want people with a CBDC wallet on their phones or whatever else. And there was a lot of controversy about that with the Olympics recently. Those that went to China, all American athletes were banned from using the local coin. So let's talk about Timeframe real quick. So it was introduced yesterday, but technically nothing's going to happen till at least 2023 even if it passes, and there will be heavy edits, is our take, as we go forward. But literally, lots of goodness in here. If I had to take out a knife and cut a piece out, there's nothing I would cut out. It's all very acceptable, which actually gives me concern and pause because it's almost too good for the people in crypto space. So we still have a long way to go, however. Remember, lots of committees, lots of people with their fingers in different pots as we go forward. Banking committees, agricultural committees, financial service committees, intelligence committees, security committees, energy committees, ESG, environmental committees, etc. And also there's a long list of other stuff that has to happen first, which is listed here. This basically reduces the chance of this bill passing for quite a long time because there's a lot of other stuff in there, like strengthening the economy, reducing healthcare costs, dealing with C19, improving education, social security and fungibility, yada, yada, yada. I mean, there is a ton of things that are way ahead of this. And also, politicians want to focus on what wins them election at the polls. So they want to placate the people that vote for them. And considering the penetration of crypto in the American populace is still quite low, there's other issues that have sprung to light recently, like gun control, that may bubble up instead. So there's very little chance that Congress has enough bandwidth to even talk about crypto legislation until after November 2022. Whoops. So that's kind of where we are. Final note is the fact that Michael Saylor was working with, I think it was Kirsten Gillibrand, the senator. She said, it's a long bill, comprehensive. We've had it vetted for months. Michael Saylor was one of the first to set eyes in it because of his expertise. Is long-standing, and we want to make sure we have lots of input before we file it. So this is another thing. I'm always kind of paranoid. The fact that they went out to so many external people is not something that regulators normally do. They like to work in their own bubble and make up their own universe without talking to others. So this may not bode well for the people that do not like people like Michael Saylor or Bitcoin as we go forward. Hopefully I'm wrong, but only the paranoid survive. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the KPM. It's a tedious subject, but something that we all need to be aware of because it does impact us all as we go forward. Thank you, everybody. Happy Wednesday, and I'll see you all tomorrow. And a big thank you to everybody and moderators and people that donated to our furry friends. Cheers all.